What an insane year we've been through! In animation alone, we've seen some major moments that shook the entire industry. The most groundbreaking animated series of the decade came to an end, Disney and Pixar is now under new management, the internet is causing mass hysteria over newly announced cartoons, the passing of legends, and John Kay turning out to be a monster? Okay, we already knew about that last one even before the controversy, but you see how crazy it can get. You'd think going back to reality would help to collect some sanity, but it's apparently even worse, especially with all the nationalists causing terroristic acts like mass shootings in the name of the Orange Dictator. So let's just stick around in the world of animation in the meantime, especially when the animated movies this year have been consistently good for the most part. Yeah, sure, there have been a few embarrassments, but among these films, the ones that shine the brightest were also the ones that do so for all movies of the year. These are the features that were able to either be this year's highlight or one of the year's biggest creative failures. I'm ANIMAT, and these are the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2018. Number 5. Worst. Sgt Stubby, An American Hero. I wouldn't be surprised if this would be the first time you've even heard of this movie, because this was the kind of film that just quickly came and went in theaters virtually unnoticed, and that's not necessarily surprising because of how simple it is. Nothing wrong with simplicity, but Stubby would present itself as a very safe and very sugar-coated feature crafted exclusively for kids, which really doesn't help with the fact that this is supposed to be based on the true story of the most renowned dog that served in World War I. Seriously, this is probably the only war movie that spends most of its time telling the dog how much of a good boy he is. But before you get any ideas about this film, I just want to emphasize that this is not to say that this is a bad movie. On its own, it's actually pretty decent. The animation's okay, it doesn't do anything stupid like lowbrow jokes or pop culture references, and it does deliver a lot of heartwarming moments. I could even say that everything in the film is at least passable. So with that said, how did it end up in the bottom pile? Well, this is one of those cases that it's not because it did anything wrong, it's just that there were others that did better. So it's more of a coincidence that it would find itself here. Stubby may not be great, but at least he served his duty as a movie.
The dog is trying to warn us! It's a wonderful life.
Number 4. Worst. Illumination's The Grinch. From the same people who adapted a Dr. Seuss book to make their worst animated feature yet, Illumination Entertainment decided to take another shot at making a Seuss movie with the holiday classic How the Grinch Stole Christmas. However, instead of making it feel like a classic like the Chuck Jones special, this one feels more like a watered-down Despicable Me. Unfortunately, the movie ended up with the common problems of films based on children's cartoons, where it would have to extend many scenes and add a lot of pointless filler in order to get to the 80-minute mark, on top of sprinkling everything with some mediocre humor. Basically, the film does have a pretty bad script, but like Sgt Stubby, while it is one of the weaker animated films of the year, the movie itself is not all that bad. In fact, it could be considered so far one of, if not the best Dr. Seuss movie. I mean, it's not like it had any competition anyways. Sure, the writing isn't all that good, but it does have some creative and impressive animation, and it did give the Grinch character a unique twist where his hatred for Christmas would originate from emotional trauma that he had since he was a kid, resulting in the Christmas feeling to be more heartfelt and could even shed a tear to some audiences. It may be one of the better Seuss films, but even by Illumination standards, it would require a second thought before touching this with a 39.5-foot pole.
You know what? If you want to apologize for something, apologize for that.
It's a wonderful life.
Number 3. Worst. Smallfoot. This would have to be the most prominent example of animated mediocrity. Even with the cute concept of turning the idea of legends upside down, where a group of Yetis questioned the existence of humans, it's the movie's complete unoriginality that ultimately made this forgettably bland. The story is dull and very predictable, the characters consist of nothing but generic archetypes, the musical numbers feel like they were slapped in at the last minute where there's no need for this to be a musical, and even the animation feels uncreative. Hey, look, it wants to be cartoony with a bunch of slapstick gags, you know, just like most poorly made mainstream animated films we've recently gotten. But admittedly, I shouldn't go hard on it too much. Despite its lack of creativity, there are a few good things to note about this feature. The message of being open-minded to the world around you is very bold and ambitious for an animated film to pull off. The song Wonderful Life is strong and well made, and even if people just say it as a fun little meme, Zendaya does give a great performance as Michi. The movie is not completely worthless, it does have some substance to it, but for the most part, this Yeti is just a mythological mediocrity.
Wait! Ah, he's gone.
It's a wonderful life.
Number 2. Sherlock Gnomes. With all these follow-ups being made in Hollywood in recent years, you know what truly needed a sequel? Gnomeo and Juliet. You know, that 2011 animated film that turned a Shakespeare play into a mainstream kids flick? Yeah, let's make another one of those, but this time, we completely turn it into a lazy and generic Sherlock movie because that Sherlock Gnomes pun is just too good not to use in the title. And we're gonna make it all about the Sherlock stuff, so everything that came from the predecessor is practically pointless to where now it's questionable to why this is even a Gnomeo and Juliet sequel in the first place. Oh, but it wouldn't be complete without the all-important hammered-in message, poorly written characters, and the unenthusiastic voice acting where every word that came out of Johnny Depp sounds like he's saying, "Can I go home now?" But in all seriousness, the one actual good thing that I can give credit for is that the animation is well done with a lot of creative possibilities displayed, including some great hand-drawn moments when it goes into the mind of Sherlock. But does it give this movie any purpose? No, of course not! It's a terribly written film that no one asked for. It doesn't take a detective to figure out that this movie is equally as good as there is a need for a Gnomeo and Juliet sequel.
Girls' language.
It's a wonderful life.
And the number 1 worst animated film of 2018 is... Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. It's official! Hotel Transylvania just went full-on Happy Madison as Dragon and Gang are making another movie as an excuse to go on a cruise vacation. They didn't even bother to write a legitimate story for it. All the monsters did is just completely rehash the plot of the first movie, but this time have Drac fall in love with a human and switch the hotel setting to a cruise. There, that should be enough for a new movie. Now go get me a drink while I have my pointless dance number to Bruno Mars. But I know that looking at it analytically as a movie is not the right thing to do with these films. That's why fans would recommend to look at them as if they are cartoons. But honestly, that's exactly why this is the number 1 worst. Even with that perspective, this movie is just not funny. All this film does is just copy the same slapstick comedy used in old cartoons without making any of them effective. Every time it tries to pull off a gag, it begs the question, why would I watch this when I could just check out the Looney Tunes who know how to make those jokes actually funny? And I'm sure that there will be some defensive arguments that praise the animation and how it would have a lot of creativity. But then again, so does Sherlock Gnomes. That also has great animation despite horrible writing. Why isn't there much defense for that film as much as this one? Is it because Sherlock wasn't directed by a guy that gave people nostalgia blindness for making a bunch of TV shows a few decades ago? Forget it! It doesn't change that this was badly written, badly directed, offers a cringy ending, and even the animation is tiresome for trying too hard to be wacky instead of being legitimately funny. While some would debate if either the second or the third is the worst of the franchise, Hotel Transylvania 3 is unequivocally the worst animated film of 2018. Now, before we go and celebrate the best animated films that made 2018 worth remembering, I would like to have an honorable mention. Early Man. Ever since the release of Shaun the Sheep movie back in 2015, fans fans have been eagerly awaiting for the comeback of Aardman Animations on the big screen, and with their next feature, the anticipation reached new heights. Not only did they promise to deliver an original animated feature, but it would also mark the directorial return of the legendary creator of Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, Nick Park. And once the movie finally made its debut to the public, those grand expectations were kinda met. Not entirely, but it didn't come out as a bad film. It is a pleasant feature with great stop-motion animation, enjoyable humor, and does include Aardman's signature charm to have audiences leave with a smile, but honestly, this would be among one of the company's weakest works. The reason why this film can also feel like a bit of a letdown is because the story is pretty lazy and can often feel rushed. I mean, one would expect a lot from an Aardman movie by Nick Park about cavemen versus gladiators, but it actually turns out to be the generic sports movie about the outcasts versus the pros fighting it out in a game of football, or soccer for you Americans. It does feel a bit disappointing that it didn't live up to the massive expectations, but at the very least, it is still a charming feature for both sports fans and Aardman fans.
Wow, that's the best thing since, well, ever.
It's a wonderful life.
Number 5. Teen Titans Go to the Movies. While the show is known to be one of the most successful series on Cartoon Network, it is also known for getting a lot of hate from the cartoon community. So much so that it ended up getting out of control, and now the haters look even worse than the show itself. However, when the Titans made their big screen debut, it turned out to be the biggest surprise of the year as not just an enjoyable animated film praised by critics, but also a pretty good DC film. As for the haters, well, I don't know. They're probably complaining about other animated reboots for some pathetically stupid reason. But back onto the movie, what makes this an unexpected delight is the clever way it builds itself as a satire. Not just to the modern DC films, but also towards the entire superhero genre, giving itself a lot more material to work with in order to display what makes those movies amazingly great and sometimes laughably dumb. Sure, the story itself is a little unoriginal, and it visually shows that it has a rather small budget, but it also shows that there was a lot of effort put into it. It is noticeable how the team of artists and filmmakers worked the best they can with the tools they had and managed to bring out some good humor, likable characters, creative animation, and witty writing. While DC may not know how to make their films dark and gritty, Teen Titans Go would come in and make a movie as fun as an upbeat, inspirational song about life.
I am a real hero. I even have my own superhero team.
It's a wonderful life.
Number 4. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Among all the animation studios out there, Disney would be the one that would be recognized the least in terms of delivering sequels to their movies. And no, those direct-to-video films don't count. However, when they do make one, they make sure that their follow-up would not only serve a purpose, but to also make it great. And that is exactly what happened when the crew brought back Wreck-It Ralph. This time around, the movie would bring Ralph and Vanellope to a pretty accurate portrayal of the internet, where the animation is an amazing achievement by presenting a vast variety of art styles wherever they go. But as they try to find a steering wheel on eBay, they end up learning more about their friendship. Now yeah, I know that sounds stupidly cliched even for Disney, but that would be the movie's core that would make the film strong both on its own and as a Wreck-It Ralph sequel. It would become this thought-provoking tale about the toxicity of dependence and to not be too clingy to your friends, which allows it to craft both Ralph and Vanellope to become more deep characters than they were in the predecessor. It is true that, like the internet itself, it's not all perfect, especially when it starts off pretty weak at first and all the secondary characters barely have enough screen time to really make an impact. But thankfully, it would keep gaining momentum as the film would progress, and would reach extraordinary levels once it gets to the climax. Regardless of the argument if this is either better or worse than the first, it will always be remembered as Disney's viral sensation.
Well, why didn't you tell me I was in the presence of a genius?
It's a wonderful life.
Number 3. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. What is known to be a rare occurrence for animated features is when there would be one that would come right out of nowhere and amaze audiences with not just something great, but also something that they have never seen before. And Into the Spiderverse is one of those rare gems. It's not just a game changer for animated films, but also for the entire superhero genre, as it delivers a grand homage to the legacy of Spider-Man with an engaging coming-of-age story, strong characters, especially with the chemistry between Miles Morales and an older Peter Parker, enjoyable voice acting, and revolutionary animation that managed to literally turn this movie into a living comic book. While it does supply plenty of fast-paced action that makes the movie both intense and exciting, there is also a lot of heart that went into it that presents the main character as he goes through the journey of not only accepting who he suddenly became, but all the responsibilities that come with it. However, like Miles himself, he can have some issues that do need a bit of tuning. There can be bits of story problems, more characters than the movie could probably handle, and some creative choices that don't really make sense, but they're all just minor problems that don't hinder on any of the achievements made by this film. It's an admirable accomplishment in animation, and it's definitely worth watching no matter which dimension you're from.
This could literally not get any weirder.
It can get weirder. I just washed my hands, that's why they're wet. No other reason.
It's a wonderful life.
Number 2. Incredibles 2. After waiting 14 years since the first film release and giving us other follow-ups that we didn't really ask for, but some turned out to be a pleasant surprise, Pixar finally released the long-awaited sequel to The Incredibles, and it made the wait worth it. So much so that it would break many box office records in order to become one of the highest grossing animated films ever by nearly reaching Frozen numbers. What made this movie succeed as a sequel is how it stays true to the core of the original film, which is the perfect blend of superhero action and family values, capable of delivering a lot of amazing animation, intense fight scenes to make the movie highly engaging, a lot of heart supplied by the memorable characters, and a story that expanded the world of superheroes and how they would be viewed by society. Granted, it doesn't have the same amount of super strength as its predecessor, where it is noticeable how it does have a very similar story structure to the first, and that Screenslaver is certainly no Syndrome. But then again, the first Incredibles already put itself in a massively high standard where many would consider it as one of the best Pixar films and one of the best animated films. The accomplishment of being a worthy successor to that alone is enough for it to be recognized as a great achievement, where even by superhero standards, this film is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, baby!
It's a wonderful life.
And the number 1 best animated film of 2018 is Isle of Dogs. As the year was mostly consisted of follow-ups and adaptations, original films, especially well-crafted ones, are becoming more of a rare breed. And with Isle of Dogs coming in as a one-of-a-kind animated feature, it is definitely a movie to appreciate and praise. As a film where almost everything was handcrafted with stop motion, it would emphasize that it was the people behind it that made this a fascinating feature to watch. The unique directing style of Wes Anderson, the hard work of the animators to bring his vision to life, the wonderful performances of the actors, and the craftsmanship of the writers all combined to tell a compelling story about political corruption in a well-developed world, all sprinkled with some enjoyable humor that you could only expect from a Wes Anderson film. True, it would want to offer a lot to its viewers, but it's in its avant-garde execution that would successfully engage audiences into Trash Island. It's as if it took the achievements of Fantastic Mr. Fox and bring it to a whole new level to deliver a movie unlike anyone has ever seen. While some animated films this year have achieved greatness, like Ralph, Spider-Man, and The Incredibles, this one managed to stand above the competition with its pure originality, which, like I said, is becoming harder to find nowadays. Whenever an original film does come out, and come out as good as this, then it needs to be celebrated the most for taking the big risk of successfully being different in an age where Hollywood is dominated by franchises. And that is exactly why Isle of Dogs earns the title of the best animated film of 2018. And that's all I've got for the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2018. After I've made my whole speech about honoring original features, I might as well throw that out the window and prepare for the giant wave of animated sequels and adaptations coming in 2019, including a sequel that I'm iffy about, a sequel that I'm hyped about. It's gonna be a bumpy ride, isn't it? Like how I've missed you! A Trolls ripoff! Another one of these? Why not? Another one of these? Why not? You better prove it's worth continuing after that perfect ending. Is Angry Birds still a thing? A Lego Movie ripoff! Will Smith turns into a pigeon. Okay. Let's see if DreamWorks can make a better Smallfoot. Bum. And now that Disney proved that they could still make good sequels, like with Ralph Breaks the Internet, hopefully they'll do a good job with this one too. See you later, dudes.